The room is silent except for the faint hum of a machine. A screen glows. A finger moves. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Each motion, identical, infinite, without meaning. A reflex pretending to be choice. You tell yourself you're looking for something news, connection, amusement, but you are lying and you know it. The truth is simpler, crueler. You scroll because you can't stop. You scroll because silence has become unbearable. You scroll because something unseen is moving you. Watch the hand. It moves without your consent. Watch the eyes. They drink light as if it were water in a desert of boredom. And yet, the thirst never ends. You feel the pulse of anxiety rising somewhere behind your ribs. That small tightness that says you should put it down, that you should go to sleep, that you should live, and then the thumb flicks again. That is not you. That is the will. The blind, hungry, unreasoning force that has always moved all things. It is older than thought, older than language, older than your fragile excuses. It commanded the first amoeba to divide, the predator to chase, the lover to long, the addict to return. Now it commands the finger to move, and you obey. You obey because you are alive, and life itself is obedience to desire. Reason whispers, warnings, this is wasting your time, this is making you anxious, this is hollow. But reason is only the mask the will wears when it wants to look civilized. Reason is a secretary taking notes for a tyrant it can never dismiss. It writes essays on self-control while the will laughs and continues its feast. You think you choose, but the choosing happens after the act, like a lawyer arriving late to justify a crime already committed. You know this pattern well. You've promised to stop before. You've sworn to live deliberately, to read more, to walk, to breathe. But night returns, and the blue glow calls you again. There is no threat, no pleasure, no goal, only motion. The same motion that turns planets, drives rivers, grows tumors. It is not rational, it is not moral. It is the pulse of existence itself, disguised as a thumb. And you call it boredom, you call it anxiety. But what it really is the will discovering that awareness has trapped it in a cage too small for its hunger. You feel it pressing against the walls of your skull, scratching, demanding noise. So you feed it images, faces, news, fear, desire. You give it everything it asks for, and it still starves. Because the will does not want satisfaction, it wants wanting. In the dim glow of your screen, you watch the endless parade of lives. Beauty and tragedy and outrage compressed into seconds. And for each flicker you feel a spark of meaning, gone before it can warm you. That spark is the illusion of control. It tells you you're choosing what to see. But what you are truly witnessing is the machinery of appetite, the will digesting the world and finding it tasteless. Some nights you can almost feel the split inside you, the small, weary intellect watching the animal within, both knowing the futility of this ritual, yet bound to continue it. Like a priest who no longer believes, but still recites the prayers, because silence would reveal the void. The mind says, enough. The body replies again. The argument never ends. You imagine that awareness should liberate you, but awareness only sharpens the irony. You know precisely how the trap works, and you stay inside it. Knowledge becomes another chain. The philosopher and the addict share the same cell, one naming the bars, the other licking them. You tell yourself you could look away any time, but you won't. Because the will has already written the script. You are merely performing it, line by line, gesture by gesture. Look closer at that gesture. The scroll, a movement without destination. It repeats the oldest law of life. Motion without meaning, striving without end. Every animal chases. Every human scrolls. The object changes, the compulsion does not. Desire is eternal recurrence made visible on glass. Each flick of the thumb is a confession. I cannot be still. And yet you want stillness. You crave silence the way a drowning man craves air. But when silence approaches, panic blooms. Stillness reveals the self, and the self is unbearable. So you return to movement, to distraction, to the glowing stream that promises escape from the mirror. But every scroll leads you back to that same reflection, your own vacant gaze. The philosophers once sought the truth in libraries and temples. Now truth hides behind a screen of moving pictures. The modern penance is attention. The modern sin is stillness. You are rewarded for your distraction points, hearts, followers, tiny symbols of relevance that keep you from confronting the ancient terror of insignificance. You no longer need to believe in God. The algorithm has taken his place. It watches, it remembers, it decides. And you kneel before it every time you unlock the phone. Do not mistake this for moral failure. This is not sin. This is physics. The will seeks motion as fire seeks oxygen. And consciousness is the spark that realizes it cannot extinguish itself. That realization is called anxiety. It is not a disease. It is the sound of the will grinding against the walls of thought. When you feel that unease rising, you are hearing existence itself murmuring, move. And so you move, you scroll, you repeat the first act of creation, endless, meaningless becoming. But sometimes, in the small hours, something interrupts. The feed slows. The finger hesitates. Between two images, there is a flicker of nothing, a blank white pause. For an instant, the will loses its grip, and the intellect sees clearly. It sees that everything moving on the screen is the same. The world's restless dream projected onto your palm. In that pause, there is silence. And in that silence, there is terror because you glimpse the truth that motion has hidden. You are not weak. You are merely alive. To live is to obey the will, to feel its hunger as your own heartbeat. Even your rebellion is part of its design. You cannot kill it. You can only watch it. And perhaps that watching is the beginning of wisdom. So the hand keeps moving. The mind keeps knowing. The two never meet, and the scroll continues, like time itself, circular, endless, devouring. You look and you look and you look, not because you want to, but because something older than wanting demands it. The light flickers. The room grows colder. You are still there, a small island of consciousness adrift in the electric sea. Reason whispers again, stop. The will smiles and answers, one more. And somewhere in the space between them, you disappear, not destroyed, but dissolved into the motion that made you. The screen dims, the heartbeat slows. In the reflection, only your eyes remain, floating in the dark, searching for the next spark of light. You know the truth now. Reason is the shadow, and the will is the hand that moves it. And you are only the silence left behind when the finger rests. Anxiety begins where silence fails. It is not the noise that tortures us, it is the moment before the noise returns. That thin space of uncertainty where the mind trembles, unsure whether the next sound will save or destroy it. Anxiety is the shadow cast by freedom when the will has nothing left to chase. You feel it before words form a vibration behind the ribs, the invisible tremor of existing without reason. No predator, no war, no storm, and yet the body prepares to flee. The hands grow cold, the heart starts hammering, every cell screaming, something is wrong. But nothing is wrong. That is the horror. The machine runs without a purpose, devouring its own power to stay alive. The modern world calls it burnout, stress, nervous, exhaustion, but it is older than civilization. It is the ancient awareness that life is movement without arrival, effort without peace. When the tiger chased you, fear had meaning. Now, fear wanders homeless through the bloodstream. You call it anxiety because the truth that there is no enemy left but yourself would kill you outright. Time is the weapon. Once, we measured it by the Sunday. Now, it measures us by the clock on the corner of the screen. Every second blinks like a command. Produce, update, improve. You are not allowed to be still. You are scheduled even in your sleep. The will found its perfect instrument, digital time, relentless and precise. Each notification is a bell tolling for another fragment of your attention. You chase deadlines that breed like insects, tasks that multiply as fast as you complete them. Even your leisure becomes labor relaxation, streamed, quantified, compared. You cannot rest without turning it into performance. The will has colonized even your quiet hours, whispering, you could be doing more. Listen to that whisper. It never shouts. It doesn't need to. It is patient, ancient, certain that you will obey. You obey because the alternative is to face the abyss of purposelessness, and that abyss wears the face of death. Anxiety is not fear of dying, it is the unbearable realization that life cannot justify itself. Desire burns, satisfaction dies, and the will demands another offering. You climb the mountain of tasks, reach the summit, and find another mountain rising behind it. The applause fades before you can hear it. The promotion dissolves into another goal. Even love turns to hunger once the mystery is gone. Every victory becomes a new prison. The moment you achieve, you begin to fear losing. The will converts joy into tension faster than light itself. We speak of mental health as if it were plumbing, fix the leaks, balance the pressure, everything will flow again. But the leak is existence. The pressure is the will. There is no cure for being alive. We invent therapies to distract ourselves from the metaphysical truth. The engine that drives us is also the engine that breaks us. Look at your heartbeat when anxiety strikes. That racing rhythm is not malfunction, it is the pulse of the cosmos condensed into your veins. Every creature that ever fled, hunted, desired, or prayed is alive in that throb. It is not you who panic, it is life itself, terrified of its own eternity. And yet, the intellect tries to help. It drafts plans, mantras, routines, medications, all noble attempts by reason to manage the irrational. But reason is small. It is a candle flickering in a hurricane of instinct. It knows the wind will never stop. It knows, even as it builds systems of control, that the will use those systems as new toys. The calendar, the fitness tracker, the meditation app, all new masks for the same hunger. You track your steps not to walk, but to prove you exist. You meditate not for peace, but to be a better performer in the economy of calm. The will wears even serenity as costume. So you live in double exposure, half saint, half machine. You post wisdom quotes between panic attacks. You speak of mindfulness while your pulse races at the thought of being forgotten. You pray to algorithms for visibility and call it connection. Anxiety thrives in that contradiction. The awareness of one's own absurdity combined with the inability to stop performing it. If you could silence every sound, if you could stop every thought, you would meet the core of the disease. Not trauma, not memory, but the sheer intensity of being, raw existence, vibrating without purpose. That is what the will feels like when stripped of disguise. It is the electricity of the universe with nowhere to go. So it turns inward and burns the vessel that holds it. It is you and not you, the eternal appetite wearing a human face. Some call it evolution, others call it sin. But perhaps it is simply physics with a conscience matter learning to suffer from knowing it moves. Anxiety is awareness multiplied by futility. The more you understand, the less you can forget. The more you see, the less you can rest. Knowledge does not soothe. It sharpens the pain until it gleams. This is why children are happier than sages, why ignorance feels like grace. To think is to disturb the surface of the pond. The ripples never stop. Every insight breeds another question, another uncertainty, another tremor of the soul. You try to fill that tremor with work, with love, with belief, but these are only temporary shelters built on shifting sand. The storm always returns, whispering its single command. Move. And you move. You fill your calendar, your inbox, your veins with caffeine, your ears with noise. Anything to drown the silence that would reveal the futility of the race. The body obeys, the mind rationalizes, and together they construct a life that looks stable from the outside. But inside, the pulse of dread keeps beating, soft, steady, unending. It beats in the boardroom, in the bedroom, in the solitude of scrolling through midnight. It beats because it cannot stop. There are moments, brief, treacherous moments, when you glimpse the machinery behind it all. A traffic light changing for no reason. A clock ticking in an empty room. A child laughing at nothing. And for that instant, you see the truth that annihilates both faith and despair. There is no direction, only movement. Life does not aim, it unfolds. And we, the conscious fragments, mistake unfolding for failure. That is the anatomy of anxiety, not a wound to be healed, but a heartbeat to be heard. It is the sound of the will gnawing at the walls of awareness. It is the song of the universe trapped in a self that believes it can conduct the orchestra. You cannot silence it. You can only listen, and if you listen long enough, you may begin to hear the faint rhythm beneath the panic, the rhythm of being itself, eternal, indifferent, immense. The heart slows, the breath steadies. You do not feel calm, but you feel real. And perhaps that is enough, the brief reconciliation between the observer and the force that moves him. Because to see the machinery is to be free, even if the gears keep turning. So breathe, not to relax, but to witness, not to heal, but to understand. The air enters, leaves, returns another scroll, another cycle, another proof that nothing ends, nothing stays. The will continues, and you continue watching, naming, trembling, alive in the pulse that has no purpose but itself. The air has settled now. The panic of the heartbeat has dimmed into a steadier pulse, and in that stillness, the real architecture of the world becomes visible, the system built to keep the will well fed and the intellect half asleep. It begins with a promise that suffering is a flaw, that discomfort can be corrected, that with the right product, the right mindset, the right subscription, you will finally rest. It is a beautiful lie, because it sounds like compassion while it tightens the leash. Walk through a city and you can feel it humming under the asphalt. The billboards do not sell you pleasure. They sell you permission to stop fearing boredom. They whisper, buy this, and you will never have to be alone with your thoughts. Each advertisement is a small theology, a sermon of convenience, preaching that transcendence can be delivered in 2 business days. The temples are bright now, clean, air-conditioned, and open 24 hours. They call them stores, but they function like chapels for the anxious. The priests are algorithms, the prayers are clicks, the sacrament is distraction. The will has always been cunning, but in this age it has achieved perfection. It no longer needs to command you directly. It only needs to seduce. It dresses itself as self-care, as productivity, as personal growth. You work to rest, rest to work, spend to save, save to spend. An endless circuit that gives the illusion of progress while returning you to the same emptiness. The world has learned to monetize the human ache. Every longing becomes a market segment, every insecurity a brand opportunity. They sell calm to the restless, and excitement to the bored, rebellion to the conformist, and belonging to the outcast. Even the wish to escape consumption is turned into a lifestyle and sold back with minimalist packaging. There is no villain to blame. The system is not evil. It is simply the will wearing the costume of civilization. It moves through factories and data centers, the same way it once moved through jungles and deserts, feeding, reproducing, evolving. The economy is a mirror of hunger. Money is the modern form of desire quantified and circulating. You feel it every time you open your wallet, every time you refresh a page. The invisible pulse that says more, more, more. Modern culture pretends to soothe anxiety while feeding it. The device that calms you is the same one that keeps you awake. The social network that promises connection leaves you lonelier than before. You crave community but receive an audience. You seek understanding but receive statistics. And in this dissonance, the will thrives, because confusion keeps the mind from resting. It is not pleasure you seek in the scroll, it is confirmation that you exist, that you are still noticed by the hive. The cult of productivity completes the circle. You are told that meaning lies in motion, that your value is the sum of your output. The modern prayer is a to-do list. Every checkmark is a small absolution, every deadline a confession of worth. You burn hours like candles before the altar of efficiency, terrified that a moment of stillness will expose your insignificance. Even exhaustion becomes fashionable. We compete over who suffers more beautifully, who sleeps less nobly, who hustles hardest in the void. The will has taught us to call our chains ambition. Observe the faces on a morning commute, eyes glazed, bodies propelled by caffeine and necessity. There is no hatred there, only surrender. They are not enslaved by tyrants, but by rhythm itself. The hum of engines, the glow of screens, the announcements echoing through metal corridors, all of it is the will singing through technology. The city is its body. We are its cells, reproducing its hunger. And when the weight becomes unbearable, when anxiety blooms into despair, the culture offers you anesthetics labeled as wisdom. The slogans arrive soft as lullabies. Be positive, manifest abundance, good vibes only. They wrap despair in glitter and sell it as enlightenment. But positivity is not the opposite of suffering, it is its disguise. The command to be happy is the cruelest law of the age, because it turns pain into failure. You are not allowed to be unhappy. You must market your despair as growth, filter it until it sparkles. The smile becomes armor, the laughter becomes camouflage. Inside, the pulse of anxiety remains sharper for being hidden. Even spirituality bends under this gravity. Meditation apps promise transcendence in 10 minutes or less. Books preach detachment while offering affiliate links to scented candles. The marketplace has learned to imitate the language of liberation. The cage now sells keys as accessories. And still, you buy, not because you believe, but because buying is easier than waiting in silence for truth to speak. It is safer to light incense than to stare directly at the emptiness. Silence has no marketing department, illusion does. The culture praises movement, innovation, engagement. To withdraw is considered failure, to rest an act of treason. You must stay visible, measurable, relevant. The moment you disappear, the algorithms forget you, and being forgotten feels like dying. So you perform a liveness post, react, respond, repeat until your identity dissolves into data. You become a profile that updates itself long after you have ceased to feel. The self turns spectral, existing only through others' perception, and the more you try to prove your existence, the more ghost-like it becomes. In that ghostliness lies the modern tragedy. We are haunted not by spirits, but by our own images, projected back at us in endless variations. Each reflection demands improvement, each version competing for attention until the original disappears. You chase yourself through the hall of mirrors, forgetting there was ever a body outside the glass. The will has no interest in authenticity. It wants motion, not truth. And so you scroll, not to find meaning, but to keep the reflection alive a few seconds longer. There are moments when the mask slips. A power outage, a dead battery, an illness that forces you offline, and suddenly the silence floods back in. For a breath, you taste what the monks called reality and the market calls failure. No music, no messages, no metrics. Just a slow awareness of being, unmeasured and unnecessary. It is both unbearable and pure. You realize how fragile the whole performance was, how little the world noticed when you stopped contributing noise. And in that wound of insignificance lies the beginning of freedom. But freedom is not what the age desires. It prefers comfort, and comfort requires anesthesia. So the hum resumes, the screens glow again, and the will smiles through the circuit. You return to your roles, to your purchases, to your carefully curated optimism. You call it balance. The philosophers once called it ignorance. Still, somewhere beneath the noise, a quieter truth waits. It knows that the cure for anxiety will never come from the marketplace that profits from its persistence. It knows that peace cannot be packaged, that stillness cannot be sold. It waits in the pause before you act, in the breath before you answer, in the instant when the will hesitates and the intellect catches its reflection. It is not comfort. It is clarity cold, unadorned, and terrifying in its honesty. When you feel that flicker, you will also feel resistance, because the will fears transparency. It cannot feed under the gaze of awareness. That is why the culture trains you to stay busy, to stay bright, to stay distracted. But if you can hold that moment just long enough to see how every advertisement, every deadline, every smiling face is part of the same mechanism, then anxiety becomes revelation. The fog lifts, and behind all the noise, you see the single impulse that has always ruled the world, the will wanting itself. You will not conquer it, you will not escape it, but you may understand it. And understanding, though it brings no comfort, brings a strange kind of mercy. Because once you see the machinery, you no longer mistake it for your soul. You recognize that the hunger surrounding you, the motion consuming you, the illusion selling itself as purpose, none of it is personal. It is the current of existence moving through all things. And in that recognition, the noise loses its power to define you. The screen glows again, the city hums. The marketplace of numbness opens for another day. But somewhere inside the endless scroll, a single awareness remains awake, watching the spectacle with the calm of one who has seen the puppet strings. And for that watcher, even the noise becomes a form of silence. The noise dies, and with it, the warmth that made illusion possible. Silence settles like frost, indifferent, absolute. You sit in its grip, feeling the body become foreign, each breath mechanical, each thought stripped of disguise. Nothing moves except awareness itself, circling like a hawk that has forgotten what it hunts. The room shows its true geometry: walls, air, shadow. No promise, no story, no future. The phone lies black and mute, an idol decommissioned. You look into the mirror and find no drama there, only reflection, a face emptied of justification. It stares back with the calm of a verdict. This is not peace, it is absence. The will still turns, slower now, visible in its hunger. It cannot be killed, only witnessed. You understand, dimly, that seeing is the only freedom possible, not escape, not victory, just the refusal to look away. And in that refusal, the mirror cracks. Through it, cold light seeps neither mercy nor punishment, simply truth unveiled. The silence resumes, and within it, the faintest flicker of stillness that asks for nothing. Anxiety as performance. The ego feeds on visibility. Attention becomes existence. Every post is a cry for recognition disguised as connection. The will thrives on applause. The self dissolves into audience. The horror of irrelevance replaces the fear of death. Tone, sharp, reflective satire laced with melancholy. Consciousness as curse. To know is to suffer. To think is to witness futility. Man as the only animal aware of his own imprisonment. We stare not because we're curious, but because we cannot bear blindness. The scroll is the perfect mirror of existence. Endless, cyclical, self-consuming. Tone, dark crescendo, philosophical climax. Relief not in conquest, but surrender. To see desire and let it pass without obedience. Freedom through non-participation. Let the will move. You remain still. Tone, quiet, ascetic, almost meditative. Final clarity. Nothing is overcome. Everything is accepted. The world continues its restless motion, and you watch neither resisting nor indulging. The scroll never ends, but awareness no longer follows it. Last image. The screen fades. The reflection remains. Eyes open, unblinking, unafraid. Tone, frozen beauty, solemn peace.